Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today, I sit down with a friend of the project, a Florida guide who spends the off-season in the lower Laguna Madre. This is my conversation with Brett Greco. All right, so again, I just always ask this just as my own checkpoints. But do you still have no questions at all? Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Cool. All right.
Except for the sound of my own voice.
It sounds interesting, right? Like it
sounds weird.
It sounds unique. Okay, cool. Well, I got Captain Brett Greco in the chair today, and this one's a cool one because you and I have kind of become pretty close the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, fishing a lot together. And I from the first time you and I fished, I was like, I would like to do a podcast with this guy. So with that being said, just run me through your first memory in the outdoors, and then kind of just like a chronological progression of you as an angler.
Yeah. I think one of my earliest memories in the outdoors would, definitely be with my father. He's the guy that exposed me to all the things, hunting and fishing. And I can remember one of the first duck hunts he ever took me on. We were in the blind. I was really young. I was too young to shoot myself, but he was just introducing me to the game and getting set up, setting decoys, calling birds, the whole thing. And I can remember it was the first flight of ducks that were coming in, and he was like, all right, get ready, get your head down, put your face down. They can see your face or your eyes, keep your head down. So I did that, being a good kid, listening to Dad, put my head down, and he's like, all right, here we go, here they come. And he jumps up and goes, bang, bang, bang. And he's like, all right, did you see that? And I'm like,
still down.
No, I had my head down. But, I think the outdoors, all those early adventures was just time with the old man.
Yeah. And aside from your dad, was there anybody else who had some sort of key mentorship role in your upbringing, like those first formative years? Because, for example, sometimes I'll have people tell me that when they started off, it was their father or their uncle or their grandfather. And then progressively, as they got better, they started fishing more with someone else in the family who then took a liking to them as well.
Growing up, my grandfather always had offshore boats, and it was a big family thing. Pop-Up, my father, my two uncles, and I, we would go out to Montauk. We would fish the canyons. We would, fish offshore for mako and tuna. Yeah. And I started, really young going with them, and really too young to even handle fighting one of those fish. They would put me in the chair, and I could barely crank the thing once or twice. And, but just good memories of being with family.
Yeah. And that was your first exposure fishing and in the fishing world, or was there another first exposure in the fishing world?
First exposure fishing would be just bass fishing with Dad.
Okay.
Yeah. Just being on a pond in a John boat, throwing a purple worm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to bet that there's a lot of events that occur between moments like that all the way to when you decide to start guiding full time. So if you could start kind of painting the timeline of, when your young years, formative years, all the way through to where you're like, what, I am pretty good at this. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. I grew up in Long Island, New York, Bethpage, total suburbs, not a place you would think, there's a whole lot of sporting activity. My father grew up there when it was still real rural, shooting bob white and deer hunting and fishing and all that. And he always, had that desire to be outdoors hunting and fishing. And, he passed that on to me. We would travel to fish here or hunt there. We were very competitive clay target shooters when I was young. We would travel around, shoot a lot of sporting clays and fit tass, and just sitting around, at the different awards dinners or check-ins and listening to the older men and women in the room tell their stories of hunting and fishing adventures, wherever it may be. It was always fascinating to me, and it was always the most interesting conversations to me, even as a young kid. And I just knew, even at a young age, growing up in New York, I'd probably get out of New York, and I'd want to be somewhere where hunting and fishing was more accessible, and just seeking adventure, somewhere beyond what I was at that time already known.
Was that a particular moment, or was that just over time hearing other people say, oh, I was fishing in XYZ, or, I was hunting here, and you thinking, oh, I don't have access to that. I wish I could be closer to it.
Yeah, I think it was more that. I think it was hearing stories, sitting at a table at one of these shooting events. And
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself preparing for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a visit at www.gordyandsons.com.
You know, this fella's talking about bird hunting in Montana, and this other guy's talking about an elk hunt in New Mexico. And,
Yeah.
you know, just listening to, you know, these older guys talk about their experiences and how exciting it was.
Yeah. And so then what is the next step? Where does young Brett go the next step?
You know, I did my first year of school in New York. I got recruited to play a little 1AA football, and that didn't pan out. I knew pretty quick that, you know, this is not worth a lifelong injury. And
I mean, but you still got to enjoy some time in the limelight. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was a good time. And, you know, I realized what I enjoyed most about the game was the camaraderie with the kids I grew up
Interesting.
playing it with, kids that I've been playing with since we were young. So when I did go to that college setting, I still love the game. It just didn't have the same appeal to me. So, you know, all right, I'm going to transfer. I'm going to go somewhere else. And, I remember I bought there was, you know, I forget who wrote it or printed it, but there was the big book of colleges, and it was every university in the country. And I was flipping through it and looking at these places that I thought would offer me, you know, better outdoor opportunity. And I was flipping through the M's, and it was the University of Montana. And I said, I'm going to try that. And that's really how that happened. And, you know, it was probably one of the best things I ever did. It really, you know, got me out of my comfort zone.
I assume it was a big culture shock.
Huge culture shock, you know, way different, you know, and different in all the right ways, though, all the good ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dorm room overlooked the Clark Fork River, and I could grab my fly rod after studying and go down to the river and catch a few trout. And it was amazing.
That reminds me, just a quick segue. Let's go back to how you got into fly fishing, who introduced you to that, and then we'll go from there.
So, you know, Dad was always a fly fisherman. He, for a long time, was, I don't remember exactly what his title was, but he was very involved with the New York Trout Unlimited. You know, so he would be hosting banquets, and we would go to this banquet or that banquet. And so fly fishing was a big thing for my father. Now, when I was younger, I enjoyed fishing, but I didn't have the same passion for it because, you know, I was younger and impatient.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoyed the shooting because it was pull, bang, bang, pull, bang, bang, you know, and it was constant action where, you know, the fishing at a young age would bore me. You know, one of my favorite stories to tell about a trip to the canyons with my grandfather, my uncles, my dad were out there, and it's going to be a little rougher. And my dad comes up to me and says, "Hey, you better take this half a Dramamine. It's going to be a little rough out there today." And, you know, I definitely grew up in a family where you just do as you're told, and you trust the guidance of your elders, and you don't question it. So I took the half a Dramamine. A little while goes by, and my grandfather comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, it's going to be rough out there. You better take half a Dramamine." I'm like, "Oh, okay, Pop." So I take the My uncle comes up to me a little while. "Hey, you better." So I end up passing out. I'm out cold the entire fishing day in the captain's chair. And I wake up and there's tuna and mako, and they've caught everything under the sun. It was like the best day of fishing they ever had out there. And I slept through the whole thing. And, you know, they get to talking to each other, and they're like, "Hey, what happened to Brett?" And, you know, Dad's like, "Well, I gave him half a Dramamine at 6." And then Uncle Tom's like, "I gave him half a Dramamine at 6:30." And, you know, and they put it together, and they're like, "We knocked this poor kid out."
Just missed out on that experience. He won't be able to tell it on a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I just wanted to make sure like I understood how you got into fly fishing, just because I feel like it's always really important to know everyone's different introduction to such a like nuanced sport. But okay, continuing, you're at the University of Montana, considering skipping school to go fishing on the Fork River, right?
Yeah, and that was it. I mean, I enjoyed it growing up, and I definitely, you know, participated in the sport with Dad growing up. But it was when I went to Montana that I really, you know, sort of took a deep dive into it, and it really started to consume me, you know?
Okay. So what happened after that first year? You know?
Oh man, it's just so accessible. So you're just doing it all the time, and you're driving to go see this river, and you're going over here to see that river. And it just became, just what you did for me anyway, in college, my time off, I was hunting and fishing. And, Montana, especially in the late 90s, was an amazing, I mean, it's still an amazing place to do it, but it was still fairly quiet back then. And it was just an amazing experience to be able to see and do all those activities so close to a guy's dorm room.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Any particular peers you were doing it with simultaneously? Guys that you're kind of growing from each other, learning things, trying to go check different areas, parts, rivers, etc.
Oh yeah, for sure. Real quick, made some solid friends that are still friends to this day. That's what we did. We got together and we fished together. We hunted together. Spring breaks. We weren't going to the party destination. We were going camping on the Bighorn, or we were camping on the Missouri River, and that's what we were doing.
Yeah. And then when did the mindset shift turn into, okay, I can make a career out of this?
Yeah, it was after my first year of school out there, and here comes the first summer break, and mom and dad call, and they're like, "Hey, you coming home for summer break?" And I'm like, "Hell no."
No.
Not sure I'm coming home anytime soon, And I was looking around for a job. The University of Montana is in Missoula. And I was looking around for a job there and, interviewing for this, interviewing for that. And one of my good friends, one of my main hunting and fishing buddies that first year, he said, "Hey, my boss in West Yellowstone, Bob Jacklin at Jacklin's Fly Shop, is looking for help. Do you want me to see if it's an option for you?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." And got hired there and, moved to West Yellowstone for the summer. And that was, my first fishing fraternity, if you will. There was five or six of us packed into a 2-bedroom apartment, and you worked in the fly shop and you went fishing, and that's what you did every day. And it was great. Bob was a pretty cool boss. You could show up 45 minutes late for your shift, and he'd be like, "Where were you?" And you're like, "Wow, they were rising, Bob." And he's like, "Oh,
I understand.
Never leave rising fish." So it was pretty neat.
Yeah. And then so again, you're working at the fly shop. How long till you actually make the plunge into the guiding deal?
It was the next year, which was probably too quick. Most fly shops sort of have a rule: you got to work in the shop for 3 years.
Interesting.
Before you start guiding. But I was in a unique position where, for this reason or that, a lot of the senior guides were hanging it up. Who took a full-time teaching position here, who got an offer to go do this there. So, Bob was kind of in a bind for guides, and he called me. It was late winter, spring, and he said, "Hey, how do you feel about trying to guide this summer?" And I've never really been one to shy away from anything. So I was like, "Sure, I'll give it a try." And I remember my very first guide trip. It's a pretty funny story. I was in the fly shop the day before and was taking bookings, and I was the bottom guide on the list, which was where I belonged, and that was fine. And, I'm booking trips for these other guys throughout the day, and I'm looking at the book, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm next." If one more person walks in here and books a guide day,
it's me.
And I'm like, okay. Well, in comes a wonderful man. His name, I'll never forget his name. His name is Dan Rice.
Dan Rice.
And Dan Rice was legally deaf.
Okay.
And he had about 10% usage of both thumbs.
Okay.
All right. So I'm like, okay, here goes my first guide trip. I'm going to have a guy in the front of the boat, on the Madison River, which has some turbulence and has some noise.
Okay.
And I'm going to be behind him rowing, and he's deaf. And he, his thumbs aren't, he doesn't have 100% usage of his thumbs, and we're fly casting all day.
Yeah.
And, it was one of those days the stars aligned for me, and the salmon flies were hatching, and big trout were eating it all over the river. And I'm rowing down the river, and I'm yelling as loud as I can at Dan, "To the left, man it, and it was screaming all day long, but we caught him and we're laughing and we had a ball. And I remember, I'm 19 years old And at the end of the day, he hands me that $100 tip.
If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, I would highly encourage you to check out my new book, Laguna. 288 pages with over 300 images and illustrations, containing excerpts by Eric Glass, Chuck Nizer, Tim O'Brien, Bill Gamble, Ben Paschal, Ryan Sparrow, Michaela Elliott, Rick Hartman, Jaco Lucas, John Pilmer, Corey Bauman, Brian Robinson, and myself. Available at select stores, or you can order it directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com. Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, look at that $100 bill, and I'm getting paid. And
I went fishing.
Yeah. And I went fishing, and I was doing what I want to do on a day off. And that was great. And I guided the season, and I guided all through college. And
well, real quick, that first year, did that guide trip kind of set the precedent for you that year, or did that year end up being more of a difficult first year? Because it goes both ways. There's a big dichotomy with that first year guiding. You got a lot of guys who have it very, very simple, where they've reset or everything kind of aligns for them, and then you have guys who have to grind out that first year.
No, it felt very natural. Wow. And I was fortunate that it was on a great fishing year. So it never felt, too difficult. It never felt like I was doing something beyond my abilities. I knew I was a competent oarsman. I knew I could safely navigate the river, and I knew where fish should be. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, the fish played along. Yeah. And, it felt like a successful first year, and I even had a few repeat customers the following year. So, all right, I showed these folks a solid enough day. Yeah. That, even though I'm a punk kid,
they're requesting to fish with me.
They're flying back across the country from wherever they're from to come fish with me the following summer.
Yeah. Was there pressure that second year?
No, it was a great crew. I was in with a great crew. A bunch of guys who've gone on to do great things out west, and we were a real solid crew. We fished days off, Yeah. We didn't miss days. If the weather was right, we were getting after it. And for me, I just always looked at it like, I'm just going to do what I do with my friends. Yeah, this is a new person, a stranger, if you will, but yeah. I know I can talk them through a cast, and I know I can talk them through where it needs to be. And it never felt too challenging. If
Understood.
You will.
No, I get it. How many years did you do that before? I assume, let me see if I get the timeline right. So you did a couple years doing that, and then from there is when you moved down to Florida, or how long does that time kind of happen?
Yeah. So it was actually my last spring break, while I was in college. I was due to graduate. And I remember my father calling me, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing for your spring break this year?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll probably go camp on the Bighorn or the Missouri River again." And he was like, "There's a couple tournaments in Florida, sporting clay tournaments. You want to go to Florida and shoot these tournaments with me?" I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. So went to Florida, shot these tournaments, had some time on the back end of the trip, free. And he, what do you want to do now? I was like, well, we're in Florida. Let's go fishing, and was calling, the tournaments were more, let's say, in the Orlando area.
So it was like a good ways away. It was a good drive.
From
the
Keys.
Yeah.
But I just, I called local places first, and I was kind of calling down the state. And for whatever reason, it seemed like that time of year, and whatever was going on in the fishery, most of the guys were talking about snook fishing at night under the lights, which is awesome. I've done it many times since, and it's a great time. But
that's not what you wanted to do then.
This was going to be my first Florida fishing experience, and both Dad and I were like, man, we want to go during the day. We want to go see, we want to go do the Walker's Cay Chronicle type stuff, you know, and kept calling down the state. And I ended up calling the Worldwide Sportsman, which is in Islamorada. And the person on the phone was like, man, you hit it right. The tarpon are here. They're early. It's happening. It's great. You should come down here. So we did. We booked a guide down there, drove down there, went out, kind of had the first day tarpon experience you're not supposed to have. I think we ended up hooking 5 or 6 between us, and and that was it. I remember my dad looking at me and he's like, well, that's the worst thing I ever did to you, son. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just get them to send you that diploma, Dad. I don't know that I'll be needing it. And, graduated and then packed the truck full of what I had and drove to the Keys and started figuring that game out.
Okay, but did you have any plan before, like from the moment you graduate to when you drive down, or you said, all right, fuck it, I'm just going to go straight in?
Nope. I knew I was going to come back to guide summer and fall in Montana. And my plan was I'm going to go down to Florida and see what it's about. See if I like living down there. See if, I can figure out the fishing there. Because I never found my path in college. I never found, my calling in college. So I was looking for a way to extend the guide year. How do I make guiding a year-round business? And at the time, a lot of people would, guide out west and then they would guide down in Chile and Argentina. I thought about doing that. That was an option I was kind of kicking around, talking to people about. And then I had that tarpon trip and I was like, oh, all right. I'm going to see if I can make that happen down there.
Okay, so then what was that first year like now? You've established yourself in Montana. You have this new kind of like straight to the IV, like addiction to tarpon, or at least this like infatuation with this fish, or at least just a Florida fishing, to put it like that. And you've just arrived in Islamorada. What is the first step you're doing?
I had my truck packed with everything I had, and I had my chocolate lab cash with me, and I drive cross country, and I'm going to go down there and I'm going to camp. And I get to Long Key campground and I pitch my tent and I'm going to camp. And here's my chocolate lab, fresh out of Montana winter in the Florida Keys in a tent, dying.
You literally
and I'm
dying.
looking at my dog and I'm like, this poor dog is going to die tonight. So I break camp, load the truck up again, and I start driving north in the Keys and hitting every hotel and, stuff way out of my budget at the time for a college kid. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, so can't stay here, can't stay there. No dogs at this hotel, no dogs at that hotel, so I keep going. And I end up spending the night in Florida City. And that was interesting, especially, coming fresh from Montana. Woke up the next morning, not thinking I was staying. Kind of like,
Really?
Man, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe I bit off more than I could chew. And, I remember sitting in the Walmart parking lot, just waiting for the sun to come up, and the sun came up and I was like, well, all right, I'm here. Let me make an effort. So I swung into the first sort of real estate office I saw, knowing they were probably into selling stuff more than renting stuff, but maybe you could, find a lead. Maybe they could turn me on as someone that had a rental. And sure enough, they did. And I rented a little trailer in Florida City and, spent my first few months there. I wasn't going to buy a boat because I was like, well, I'll just wade fish, see if I like it here. See if I just like living here, and learned pretty quick. There's not a whole lot of accessible wade fishing. I mean, I would like swim across channels with my rod in my teeth to wade this flat. And, with zero success other than the swim. And so then, all right, I need a boat, so scraped up what I could and bought a used skiff and made all sorts of mistakes running that skiff.
Okay, but hold on. What skiff was it? How much did it cost?
It was a backcountry Phantom. I think it was when it was built by Champion, and it was a backcountry Phantom. I believe it was a 2000. Or maybe a 99. And, oh man, you name it. I mean, that's a good boat for somewhere other than the Keys. South Florida, you do cross some deeper water and boy, did that boat beat you up. And, there might as well have been a guy on the bow with a 5-gallon bucket thrown it in your face. You'd be soaking wet if there was any kind of wind. And, but I learned for a few years on that boat, and I can remember crossing Biscayne Bay on the way home, before I figured out how to run the shallow water, before I figured out where the shallow routes were. And if it's windy this way, go that way. And if it's windy that way, go this way. I would just go right across the bay, And I can remember the push pole coming loose. I'm looking back at the motor to make sure, it's still, it's still peeing and everything's going good. And I'm looking back at the motor and I look up in time to see my white fiberglass push pole, swinging towards my forehead. And I ducked it and it smashed into the polling platform, exploded into a million pieces.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, then, so you're at this point, are you taking clients or are you still just figuring it out for yourself?
No, I didn't take clients for a good, I think maybe 3 years that I went down there to the Keys. I was just fishing every day. I was just trying to learn. And because I had been guiding in Montana, for a good number of years before that, I recognized what's a good product and what's not a good product. And I knew, my first couple of years, I couldn't deliver a good product. So I really just put that time and effort into educating myself and making sure when I did finally invite some guests down to join me, I could show them something.
Yeah, worth their while.
Yeah.
I get it. I forgot where I was going to go with this. I had it on the tip of my tongue. God damn it.
It'll come back to you.
I'm sure it will. We were just talking about you. Of those 3 years, was there which of the year was particularly like the year that was most beneficial to you as an angler learning the Florida system? Like, if that makes any sense. Like, which year did you kind of learn the most or have the aha moments, thinking, okay, like I'm getting to a level where I can actually have a good product to sell?
Starting, when you start to put together tides, current, directions, and how the fish work in those. And once I start, at first, sure, I understood the concept of a tide, but I didn't really understand the concept of, well, how does that tide move that water in this particular spot? And it wasn't until I started, going and going and going and watching and watching and watching, and then understanding, well, okay, so when it's falling here, it's going to move this direction over this flat, and the fish are going to come up from here and work this way. And you start to put that stuff together.
Okay. So we're at the end of year 3, right? You're about to start guiding, you announce you're guiding, you start guiding, period. I'm willing to bet that was a little bit of, ruffling feathers in the guiding community over there. How was it, implementing yourself in this community? I
met some great people that to this day are still great friends. And I also met some people that were very hostile. It wasn't easy and it wasn't necessarily kind, but that's okay. It didn't deter me. It didn't bother me. I kind of, understood that, that can be the nature of the business, almost like any business sometimes. You got someone new and it's someone new in the way. It's someone new competing for work. And so, there were certainly some tense situations, but nothing that spooked me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I know that that's the case, but the reason I ask is because I feel like this is kind of a really good way to illustrate kind of how cutthroat the industry was back then. And you don't have to say names if you don't want to, but I kind of want you to paint the picture of what, Brett Greco really was doing when it came to dealing with so much abrasiveness. For example, the story you told me at the bar, right? Where the guy shoulder checked you, and then I forgot exactly what happens there, but that's what I want.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There was a particular old timer there. I won't mention his name. I'm not even sure if he's still with us.
Yeah.
He was old back then, and this is 20 years ago. And I believe he was in his 70s at the time. And he hip checked me into the bar about as hard as I've been hit since the football days, and I didn't see him. He kind of did it from behind me, and I spun around ready to go. And, here's a 73-year-old man that did it. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? What am I going to do? I'm going to hit you, 73-year-old man. We're going to have a bar fight. But, they're the things that at the time they might bug you, but then you look back on them and it's a great memory.
Yeah.
And it's a great memory. It was part of the journey and it's all good.
Yeah. It was just testing the waters, really. Now, okay, I feel like we've spent about half an hour just going through your own story and kind of how you got to these areas or how you got to that point. I'm really curious to now start, talking about your own stories or some of your own favorite stories, like, tarpon, permit, different clients, things that kind of stick out to you that kind of, like that we've gone over on the skiff before that we've already mentioned would be great for this like kind of stuff?
Gosh, there's so many.
Like I'll run your memory. There's one that I really like that I think shows a lot of who you are, but the one guy that you like basically canceled the day after, you found out he had foul hooked that shark and basically killed it.
Oh yeah, that was a tough one. Yeah. We were tarpon fishing. It was a new customer. This customer let me know that he was a captain and did some guiding in the Northeast, for stripers and bluefish and false albacore. And I was like, great. And he was a younger guy. And I picked him up at the marina in the morning, and it, seemed like it's going to be a great day. Here's a younger guy who's in the industry and he could cast, and, I thought it was going to be a good one. And we went to the Pocket, which is, especially back then and even before then, was one of the most beautiful places you could see tarpon swim. And here comes the first string of fish, and he throws in there and he hooks up, and he, first shot of the day. He's never played the game, and he's on a tarpon, and all right, this is going to be a great day. And we fight that tarpon for a while, and I don't remember, it jumps off or breaks off after 10 minutes, whatever, no big deal. We go back to the stake and get set up again, and another string or 2 or 3 goes by. He hooks up again, jumps it a couple times, comes off, whatever, we're high-fiving, we're having a day. And then, get back to the stake, set up. I'm looking down the bank. Here comes a great big lemon shark. And I'm like, hey man, here comes a lemon shark. You see it? And he's like, oh yeah, cool. I'm like, yeah, it's a big lemon, swim down the bank just like these tarpon will. Just let them slide on by. Don't mess with them.
Yeah.
And he starts a cast and he shoots it out there. And I'm like, whatever. In my mind, I'm like, whatever. He's probably just,
like accuracy testing, whatever,
target shooting. Yeah, just working on the cast. So that's fine. So I kind of look away. I kind of ignore the situation that's happening 30 feet off the boat. And I'm staring down the bank looking for the next string of tarpon to come. And all of a sudden the angler goes, oh, I got him. And I look back and the shark is ripping away and lines peeling off his reel and my rod and reel. And, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, yeah, all right. They will eat it. I'm like, the fish is going to make a right or a left and it's going to cut the tippet. So
yeah, any second now.
Enjoy the ride for a few minutes and then it's going to cut it on its teeth. It was a big one, so it's going to cut it. It's not going to last long. And, now all the fly line's gone. Now we're deep in the backing. And now I'm like, well, shit, I gotta chase this now. Like, this thing's way out there. So we get off the stake, start up, chase it down. And we're reeling and reeling and reeling and reeling. And finally we get, within eye shot of the shark, and I can see blood is pouring out of the shark, and I'm like, hey man, did that shark eat it? Yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So finally we get closer to it, and he had foul hooked it and cut it pretty bad. Yeah. And I was pretty pissed.
Understandably.
I don't like the idea of, I love to hunt and I love to harvest animals, kill animals, if you will, but never to waste it, never just to harm it. And it finally broke the backing. In the backing. So whatever happened, it finally broke in the backing. It was a brand new fly line I just put on the reel the night before. And, I in my younger years, had a much shorter
temper, just
patience. Yeah, my temper was, not the best. And we got back to the stake, and I laid into him pretty hard. I let him have it. I let him know, like, hey, you're a captain and you did that. You snagged that shark. What?
Yeah.
You just hooked 2 tarpon in like the first hour we've been out here, and they're coming good. And did not like his response to that at all. And I said, that's it, man. Wind it up. We're done. And I took him in and I said, get out of the boat. Don't call me ever again. I'm not interested in fishing with you.
Blacklisted.
Yeah. Yeah. You hate those kind of stories, but you guide long enough, you're going to get a few of those, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone's personality meshes.
Yeah, no, I get that, but like, so that's kind of, I think, the stories that I think would be very good, and it doesn't have to be, client, bad stories or anything, but it could just, general stories like that, because I think that, those are, from the stuff that you've told me, I think you're the best at telling stories like that.
Gosh, there's just so many, just so many great experiences with great people, fishing for all the different species. I can remember, the first bonefish I ever guided somebody into was a 10.5 pounder in Biscayne Bay. And, it was a great fella, Ed Finnegan. And, it's just one of those situations. He never saw them. I just kind of talked him through it. Little left, little longer, drop it, put it in, strip, stop, strip. You got them. And here comes 10.5 pounds. And, it's the first bonefish I've ever guided a customer into. And I lift it up and he's like, "Is that a good one?" And I'm like, "I think so." So that's, you look back on that, and that's, 20 some odd years ago. And yeah, it was good stuff. I'm trying to think of another one.
Well, I guess I can kind of help you kind of in that direction. So like, I know you spend a little bit of time, or a good amount of time, doing tournaments. Some of your, let's go, tournament stories, some your best results, or heartbreaks, whatever, stuff like that I think not many people get to experience that side of.
Yeah, one of my favorite would be with Tim O'Brien in 2019 in the Golden Fly. He was on a roll, and when he gets on a roll, he seemingly make them all bite, and he had that going on that 3 days. And the first day, unfortunately, we didn't connect on how enough, but the second day he knocked it out of the park. And I remember one of the fish he hooked in that tournament drug us well into Duck Key, like well into the residential canals of Duck Key. And, here he is fighting this fish that we know we're going to strap. And there's offshore boats going by. It's going under docks and around boat lifts. And we're just both freaking out, like so stressed out. And then you finally get it and you're like, "Holy shit, I can't believe we got that one." Just I'm on the spot. You're gonna have to edit that.
No sweat. Yeah, no sweat at all. I think that, again, the stories and tournaments are super important, just because I feel like even stuff like me, like I have not been able to experience very, very many tournaments. And there's kind of like this air of like, hearing someone talk about the competitive level, in my opinion, makes me want to strive to fish better in the event that I find myself in that scenario. And that's kind of why I like listening to stories like that. So, we went through, one of your best results. You didn't really finish how that tournament ends. So we could finish how that tournament ends and then just keep going that way. Yeah,
we ended up in third that tournament. And that was a good finish. Certainly had the opportunity to finish a little better, but hey, that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. What about your first year? First year,
first year was a lot of mistakes. Just nervous mistakes, probably like strapping a fish and not taking a photo of the fish with the strap. Having a fish, somehow jump and unlock itself from the lock gaff. A fish that would have been a strap fish. We got him. Got him boat side. Use the lip gaff. Have him. All right, let's start breaking out the tape measure and the strap. Fish jumps and with its somehow with its face pushes the locking mechanism open and like slow motion falls off the gaff into the water, swims away. So stuff like that.
Was there a moment where you kind of started getting recognized back by some of like the higher ups in the guiding community? It doesn't have to be even in tournaments, but just more so like, you had to deal with the abrasiveness. You kind of showed that you were here to stay. Was there kind of a moment where like the tide really turned on how people felt about you being like an out of town, quote unquote, guide going in?
I don't know. And I think I don't know because I never put much attention towards any of that stuff. I never really let myself worry about what someone else was thinking about what I was doing. My job was to, do the best I could that day and get my angler on the fish. And I never really put much stock in what what's the rest of the crew thinking or saying, or, you know,
Interesting.
I never let myself worry about that. And that's even before I got into fishing, that was always kind of my personality. You got to do you. And, you know, there's enough to think about and just doing you that I never felt like there was the need or the room to worry about what everyone else thought, said, or did.
Mm-hmm. What was the best year of tarpon fishing that you got to experience?
Oh, probably COVID.
Really?
Yeah, probably that 2020 when, I mean, there were great years well before that too, but that was a memorable year because, you know, you watch that place come back to a life and productivity that you hadn't seen in a number of years. Just with a few weeks rest where there weren't, you know, a ton of boats running, there weren't jet skis, there weren't a ton of people fishing. And it seemed like all the species within just a couple weeks were, you know, greater numbers, tailing more, rolling more, happier, shallower, you know, all the things you hope you see every day with just that little bit of pressure, and not just fishing pressure, just overall boating pressure. To see that change was really something. And, you know, probably the most I got to fish in March, April, you know, than I had since my first 3 years there, you know, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and so we've gone over basically like, you know, bonefish, tarpon. I'm curious, did you ever, you know, go and pursue the permit stuff and the snook stuff, or were you just strictly, all right, like we're doing this, where tarpon is the program?
No, you know, tarpon definitely is what brought me down there to begin with. But, you know, the big bone fishing, the large bonefish that, you know, especially then there's still great big ones swimming around, but they certainly were more prolific, you know, back then. And that was I really got into that. I really enjoyed seeing and fishing for those big bonefish.
Well, let's hear a couple of those big bonefish stories.
You know, the largest I ever put my hands on for a customer was 13 and a half. And that was a big, beautiful fish. And, you know, many guys have caught them bigger than that. But, you know, that was something to, you know, to have that fish in a net and see that size bonefish. I was like, holy cow, you know, that's really something.
Well, hold on. Describe how that happened, because that feeling of holy cow, that I won't feel that unless you tell me. Yeah. How that, from the moment that day starts, like run me through that hole. Give me the Brett Greco experience.
Yeah, that was just a great day of bone fishing. You know, we started on the ocean side of Biscayne Bay and they were really coming down in big schools and very plentiful. I forget how many they caught. I want to say they landed like 19 bonefish on the ocean side there. Wow. And so it was already a great day. And then the tide was right to go hit some flats inside the bay. And we went in there and, there was a group of 3 tailing hard, and I could tell they were large. You know, I knew they were big ones, but didn't know it was going to be that big. And the guy threw in there and stripped it right, and it came tight, and the fish took off. And, you know, just talking them through the fight and everything. And it wasn't until the fish was boat side that I was like, oh, wait a minute, you know, whoa, look at this one, you know? Yeah.
Man, that's so cool. It's cool how things like that can kind of come together. And like, you know, you and I have had some cool fishing down here, and I think that, you know, that might kind of serve like a good little segue. You know, how did you get into the Lower Laguna environment? Because I think 3-4 years ago is when you moved down here.
Yeah, I bought a place down in Laguna Vista about 4 years ago.
So like, how did that happen? How were those? You mentioned a little bit about what that first year was like to me on the boat. Like, I'm curious as to like the fishing, what you thought, and especially like the comparison between two, you know, I would consider, you know, well-known fisheries. Florida much more than Texas, but still definitely known for its like fauna.
Yeah. Oh, I give all the credit to Tim O'Brien. He was very generous, and he would bring me down here to quail hunt with him. And, you know, I would come down and we would quail hunt, and I thought that was awesome. Had a great time, you know, enjoyed that. Always, you know, upland bird hunting is my favorite. You know, if I got one more day to play and they're like, Brett, you got one more day to play, what is it going to be? It's going to be upland bird hunting. And so I thought that was great. And then, it was, I don't know, maybe the fourth year or fifth year. Tim's quail schedule was busy. He's like, hey, my quail schedule's busy, but why don't you come down in October, early October? We're going to fish the morning and then we're going to shoot white wings in the afternoon. And we did that for 3 days or so. And I was like, man, this place has all the games I love right close. I can go saltwater fishing. I can shoot doves. I can go deer hunting. I got a beautiful beach, and it just offered a lot. And I just wanted to spend more time in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to really stick a big trout yet?
Not, some decent ones on tackle, but nothing too big on fly. No.
Yeah, I was just curious as the first year went, because 4 years ago was right when we were dealing with like that post that big freeze, right? You moved in 2021.
I think I would have bought the house. It would have been 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, well, the freeze had just happened. So yeah, we didn't really have many big trout, but I was just wondering if you had the chance to see stuff like that when you had first gotten down here, because that's kind of one of the biggest allures here is, funny enough, you and I have barely seen any trout together, right? But it's one of the most well-known things here is like, there's the trout on stingrays, there's the big singles, and it's the stuff that kind of you don't see in other places.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. It's a really unique place. I mean, I think the beauty of the surrounding environment, the consistent shallowness of it, the number of targets you get to see in a day. It's a really special place, and really enjoyed my time here. I didn't have a boat my first year, so I was just going when someone had room for me, and I was driving up on the island here and trying to wade fish from different spots here or there. And it just really, the surrounding environment, the landscape is really unique. And in that landscape, while you're fishing, there goes a nilgai, here's
getting charged by a nilgai or something.
Here's a big buck swim, running right across the flat in front of you. There's a coyote. Still feels like a very wild place.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the cool things is like, especially like the situation that like you're in right now where you can fish on the weekdays or you can pick the good weather days. Like, I think I was talking with, I think it was Troy Wittenbach, which is a friend that, I have now because of, the connection that you made. But he was telling me, he was like, man, like, Brett doesn't know how good he has at being able to just cherry pick the good weather days and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, like you get to see such cool, wild shit out here if you're fishing the weekdays. But the minute the weekend comes around, it's like all that stuff goes like dead silent.
Yeah, and I could see where you guys pick up on that more than me, because coming from South Florida, even a busy day out here seems quiet to me.
Really?
There's quite a few boats out there. It's still a spectacular place. It's still one of the most unique places you can fish and offers a unbelievable fishery. But, there's people doing it. And so, even days when I'm out with other guys here, that are born and raised here, been fishing here their whole lives, and like, God, it's busy today. I look around and I'm like, I'll take this busy.
There's a lane right here. I can fish.
Yeah.
Any particular like characters, any new friends that you've made in the area that you're like, wow, like these guys can fish pretty well, like just as well as the guys I was fishing with over there. They're also great camaraderie to have around here, like just basically honorable mentions of people that you fish with down here.
Oh, they're all great. It's such a great crew of people here. Everyone has been so friendly and so welcoming and inviting. Troy Wittenbach, Tim O'Brien, Brian Robinson, Bill Hagan, just randomly ran into Eric Glass, had a burger with him. Just everyone is it's a really solid community. I really enjoy it. My lady and I both, we really feel blessed that we've met the folks that we have and we get to spend the time outdoors with the people that we have,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree at all. Forgot where I was going to go with that. I had another good point. Oh, well, I kind of want to just segue more. So in the overall space, not so we kind of went Florida, Texas. You as a guide, like under like a topic as you as a guide, who are like some of the people that you've spent time with fishing that are, upper level anglers that even you are like, wow, like, these are, prime examples of good fly anglers or, just good overall analyzers of the fishery, etc.
Yeah. Tim O'Brien, great to fish with him.
Nice.
Love fishing with him. You know, tarpon fishing with him was a ton of fun. Roger Fernandez got, fortunate enough to spend a couple of years fishing with him. He's a machine. Permit fish with Mike Ward. He's something to see. He's a hell of a permit angler. Really all you got to do is push the boat. He's going to see him. He's going to see him. He's going to throw to him. He's going to catch him. That was a neat experience. There's been a lot of guys. And then, my favorites are probably the ones that maybe they started with me and maybe they hadn't done it before. And you train them up and now you've been fishing them maybe 15 years and now they're apex predators out there, and now you watch them go to work and you're like, all right.
Yeah. If you want to give a few shout outs, bro, feel free.
Oh,
it's okay.
yeah.
No sweat. Where were you going with that?
Oh, that was probably there.
Yeah. Heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thought of another good, fishing story, going back to like share a good fishing story. And I think I shared it with you. It was during a Keemarata tournament. Oh, I don't know how many years ago, but I was fishing with a nice gentleman named Dudley. I hadn't met him before. And we had just caught, I think it was like a 7 or 8 pound bonefish. Nice fish. And we release it. I climb back up on the tower and I no sooner stand up and turn around to face forward and there's a stingray with a massive permit on it. And the permit's tailing and tailing and tailing. And the angler kept count. He said he had something like 26 shots at him. The permit, I've never seen a fish so infatuated with a ray before the permit was oblivious to everything. And the guy was making decent shots. They just weren't going right in front of that fish. And it was finally like the 26th cast landed where it needed to. The fish happened to, stop tailing and, lift upright just long enough to see the fly. He stripped it once, fish crushed it. Long fight, ended up being a 34 pound permit. Yeah, it was this massive fish. And, that's definitely a highlight for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like highlights are, they're kind of like the cherry on top to people, like in the story of guys who fish so much. But at the end of the day, I feel like when you fish a lot, it's really hard to base your career on the highlights, which it's kind of a weird concept to grasp. But like me personally, like I like to judge myself overall as even the bad days, the days where it's like 1 fish, 2 fish days versus, one crazy day, 2 crazy days. I don't know. It's more so, I guess what I'm trying to segue into is, what your outlook is on, how the guiding world is and ego.
Yeah. Boy, that's a heavy one.
Yeah. It was a bad segue. I could have done a lot better on that one.
Just like every sport, there are large egos in it for sure.
That's no sweat.
And, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's all part of, I think, competitive nature. And, again, it was, going back to what I said earlier, it was one of those things that I never put much thought into. I didn't worry about what that guy was doing or this guy is doing. I just worried about what I had to do. And I just focused on what I had to do. I can't dictate or control anything anyone else is going to do. The only thing that's in my control is what I'm going to do. Yeah. So I never really worried about that other stuff. I know, there's people that love me and I know there's people that don't. And that's okay. Yeah.
Well, so you said there was a certain line you said basically like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. Right. I feel like that's another good segue here because that last segue was really bad. Kind of like, what would you like to do next in your career or as a fly angler?
I don't know. I think I remember telling you this in the boat once before. Like, I kind of figured out that one of my favorite things about guiding is going to a new environment, knowing nothing, and putting the time in to learn it to where you're proficient enough to provide a good product to a traveling angler. And that's one of the things I'm enjoying here. It's a new environment. Now I've had so many great people take me fishing and they've certainly helped me, Josh Fields and couple of James Sturgis, couple of names I didn't say earlier, great friends, and I get to fish with them regularly. And, but I spent a lot of time out there on my own or pulling my fiance around.
Yeah.
Now I got her pulling for me, which is even better.
Of that the other day.
Yeah, she does a really good job. She's good at it. And going out there and paying my dues and putting my time in so that, I can share this new place that I've fallen in love with my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it, man. All right, we're at the 53-minute mark. Is there anything that you want to have had said that I might have missed? I don't think I missed anything. But then again, we basically went into this head first, so I just wanted to make sure I got everything.
I can't think of nothing.
Cool. Yeah, no sweat at all, man. Yeah. All right, so the last two questions I like to ask is, looking back at everything that you've done in your career, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
Ooh. Yeah, maybe have been a little more patient in my earlier years, where I was maybe a little too hard charging. Maybe I did upset some customers back in the early days, and that never would have come from a mean streak or a nasty side. I'm not a mean guy, but it came from just that competitive nature, playing sports, competitive shooter. And, you just want the guy or gal on the bow to do well. You just want them to do well, and you want them to love it. And sometimes you don't translate that quite right. And I think, that's something that definitely I got better at in time.
It seems so.
Although I have great customers that, would say differently. They would say, Greco, you never got better at it. But I love them and they love me, and it's all good.
Heard. It's a good answer. And the last question I like to ask is, as if you're talking to the next generation, think kids 18, 16, 14, who, for some reason are considering a profession, a career in the outdoor industry, what is a piece of advice that you'd give them?
It's all about time in. It's all about just logging the hours out there learning. And, there's no substitute for time on the water. You can read books, you can
look at maps,
you can look at charts, you can study this and that, but there's no substitution for being out there and just put your time in. Even if you got to fish alone because you got no fishing partner that day, go do it. And, sometimes fishing alone isn't the most successful thing, but those moments aren't about catching the fish. It's just about learning something out there, watching how they work this flat, that flat. Why do they move on here? What's the wind doing? What's the air temp? What's the water temp? Mm-hmm. And putting all those pieces of the puzzle together. Yeah,
I don't disagree. I like that you said that. I mean, I feel like I've spent a lot of time on the water alone this year. And I feel like those have been some of my most favorite days. Mm-hmm. Just because I've just really learned to enjoy observing all the fish behavior, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And I've gotten pretty lucky with some of the filming too. Like the one I keep thinking about is the one of that heron that I shot where the fish is literally looking in the tracks of the heron trying to eat grass shrimp. You don't see that if you're fishing, you see that if you're there to appreciate and take it all in. So I completely agree with the way you just said that.
And that is, another one of the very special things about this area. The bird-fish relationship here is really fascinating. Yeah. Whether it's the herring or the reddish egret, is that reddish egret?
Roseate spoonbill, stuff like that.
Or it's the gulls dipping, or, there's such a connection with the birds and the fish here. It's really neat. I mean, there are some times in Florida where I'm looking for birds, but it's very seasonal. Mm-hmm. Whereas here,
it's almost daily.
Now, after a few years, if I see a reddish heron or a reddish egret, I'm pulling over there because there's probably a redfish somewhere. I mean, even if the egret's sitting in a tree, there's probably a redfish below it somewhere, and that's fascinating to me. I just think that's so cool.
Cool. I totally agree with what you said. All right. Well, we've 57 minutes, 54 seconds, got everything we needed to say. All that we have left to do is just get on out of here, bro.
Cool. Well, thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.